Previously on Podcast Without Pretense.
So it's episode 152, and Rock and Roll Frankenstein is a distant memory, thank goodness.
I think I blacked out during the last episode. What happened?
I mean, the important part is we watch it on time so we don't disappoint people.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Strickland.
I'm Iyaz actor.
I'm Eric Sandine.
And together, we found this really cool police call box, but we're not sure how it works yet. Time travel joke!
Okay.
So, we're officially recording episode 150 after recording episode 151 last week. And I want Iyaz, who is responsible for what happened to us, to explain what's going to happen in the next hour or so.
Okay, so in this hour, we are going to, for our 150th episode, which is a monumental number, considering we basically only shot like one episode a month for a while.
Yeah.
We're going to re-review Rock and Roll Frankenstein, a movie that we watched for our terrible game that we play. We're such a connected bunch of people. We usually have second screens, and we wanted to see how long we could watch a movie without going to a second screen, without drinking alcohol, without being like giving like snarky comments with somebody watching with you, just sitting there and watching a movie. And a long time ago, for some reason, I thought Rock and Roll Frankenstein sounded like a great movie title. At the time it was available on Netflix. We watched it way back when.
It was the second movie we picked for this, which is remarkable when you consider it has become the benchmark for all movies we've watched since.
Yeah, and we've probably watched at least 50 movies for the show. That's
no, way more than that. Way more than that. We started watching movies somewhere around episode 43 or 44, and we're on episode 150 now. And granted, not all the episodes between now and then had movies attached to them, but I'd say more than 50% did. So we've watched at least like 60 movies.
Yeah, so it's still the bellwether. It is the gold standard of shit.
Yeah.
It is Rock and Roll Frankenstein.
I guess the first thing we need to do, Iyaz, is determine, do we think upon a subsequent viewing, and we'll get into more about not just a subsequent viewing of this movie, because, oh no, that's not a...
The rage has frozen him in place. The Rock and Roll Frankenstein gods will not allow him to say ill of the show, of the movie, that is.
You know, it's funny, as much as we mentioned this movie, I'm surprised that like the director hasn't hit us up on Twitter for this one.
Well, the director, as far as I know, he was working on like some movies as a sound editor. Like he's not. I don't think he's a director anymore.
Well, that's good.
We'll go find his Twitter account. That's what I'll do tomorrow. Be like, hey guys, we talked about your movie a lot. For about 100 episodes, we talked about your movie. Now, there's no way I'm starting the discussion on this rewatching of this movie without Jonathan.
There we go.
I'm here.
All right, you're back, and you're alive.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I was here the whole time. What was funny was that I had frozen, but you guys were still going, and I could hear you, but I could see that my video had frozen. And I was like, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It happens a lot on this show. The rage stasis happens all the time.
Yeah, no, it does. What I was saying though was that not only did we watch the movie, we went above and beyond that. Eric has more brain cells left than the other two of us do, so he stopped before Iyaz and I.
I might have started out with more because of that, and that's why I didn't watch it. But
yeah, we'll talk about what that is. But before we get into the extras that we endured. Upon the subsequent viewing, do you guys feel like the reputation we gave Rock and Roll Frankenstein as the most putrid, most mean-spirited of the movies we've watched already, do you still feel that that is justified, or do you think that we need to reevaluate?
So you posted a few of the films that we watched on Facebook the other day, and I'd forgotten some of, and even reading through the list that you posted, this is still far worse than anything that you posted in that list.
probably the worst movie, which I don't think I posted in that one, was Mummy Maniac, which was
Right.
mean-spirited and just poorly executed all around. The thing about Rock and Roll Frankenstein is the people who are making the movie generally know how to make a movie. They don't know how to make a good movie, but they know how to frame a shot more or less. There are a couple of really bad examples of that in the movie, including one where, and they point this out in the commentary, spoiler alert, some of us watched the movie with a fucking commentary track. They point out in one scene you can actually see the clapper, the scene clapper, so the slate. In other words, you can see the slate in the frame of the picture, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I feel the same way. I still feel like this is the high water mark for mean films. What about you, Iyaz? Do you still feel the same way, or do you think that we've been unfair to Rock and Roll Frankenstein?
I think for the first 30 minutes of the movie, it's redeemable. But the movie goes beyond 30 minutes. So
yeah,
it is still. I mean, Mummy Maniac was bad as a film to watch. There was also Don't Go in the Woods, which
Oh yeah.
was it was a really bad. Not was it a bad movie? It was shot like 15 frames per second. So I was getting sick watching it. So
that was also one that you picked.
I have never thought once to think, hey, what's the frame rate of the movie? Because you shoot movies at least 24 frames per second, and then you bring it up. You don't bring it down to 15. Like Vincent D'Onofrio did, apparently, who was behind the whole thing. But no, Rock and Roll Frankenstein remains the worst movie, the most mean-spirited movie. I mean, and the thing is, though, I didn't finish Crossroads, to be fair. So, could be wrong.
Yeah, no, but when Britney Spears goes on her homophobic rant and starts to shove crucifixes into the asses of priests, you really start to question her choices. She doesn't do that. But it does happen in Rock and Roll Frankenstein.
Now, more prefatory stuff. I want everyone to be aware that this movie is no longer on Netflix. I went out and bought the movie on Amazon with $5.99 or $4.99 credit on Amazon, had the movie sent to me in the mail, and I have the special collector's edition, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I took the disc and I somehow shared it with my friends through the internet because, come on, I can do that. I also made sure that the audio tracks included the commentary track. I also included the behind-the-scenes featurette because that's what makes this a special edition. Now, guys, what you guys don't know is that I did not rip or share the other special features, which include the music videos for the music that's in the movie. Now, I have not seen them because of reasons. We'll talk about this movie. So, where the hell do we want to start with this?
All right, well, we'll give a real quick synopsis just in case you aren't familiar with the film or haven't watched the previous episode. So the easy synopsis is you've got a guy named Bernie who's a record executive. Well, actually, he's really an agent. He's a music agent. And he's tired of all of his clients dumping him just before they make it big because he's never been able to cash in. So he comes up with a great idea to use his nephew, whose name is Frankie. Bernie's last name is Stein, so it's Frankie Stein. And this drug addict named Iggy, thus your Igor, to put together a musician made out of the body parts of dead rock and roll stars. Because Frankie Stein is a former coroner who was booted from his position because of his necrophilia. And he has come up with a way using fetuses to rejuvenate dead flesh. If you just inject the neurons from fetuses into dead stuff, it brings it back to life. So then they collect all these different body parts, including, most importantly, Elvis's head, and through a series of hilarious hijinks, Liberace's penis. They were supposed to get Jim Morrison's, but they got Liberace's. And then the rest of the movie is about this monster trying to learn how to be a rock and roll star. And then after that point, it switches gears and it all becomes a battle between Elvis, who's a horn dog for the ladies, and Liberace, who's not just gay, but has every taboo fetish you can think of. So it's not just that Liberace's penis is asking for gay sex. It's tons of other unrelated fetishes. And that's the rest of the movie, with the monster being kind of horrified at his own existence, and then eventually uses a chain to rip his penis off of himself because he can't live with himself anymore. The end. That's the synopsis.
Yeah.
Also, there's a shocking lack of rock and roll in Rock and Roll Frankenstein. There are like two and a half maybe rock numbers in it, and the rest is all MIDI sounding classical music, which I suppose, upon the subsequent viewing, I suppose is representing the fact that Liberace's penis is getting more and more control. Maybe. I don't know. Wasn't covered in the commentary track, because that would have been fucking interesting.
I think you're giving him too much by saying that they could have made the commentary track interesting.
Well,
they made the
Eric,
movie. Do you think they could make the commentary interesting?
Eric, you didn't listen to the commentary track.
I didn't.
Good on
I
you.
didn't. You're right.
Good on. So here's the thing about the commentary track. They could have taken the commentary track to take the effort and explain some of the ideas that fueled the movie, but instead they concentrated on tons and tons of boring technical shit. And considering that the movie is just like, it's clear that they're not incompetent filmmakers. They're very low budget filmmakers, but it's not like they don't have any idea what they're doing. But they're not auteurs or artistes. So hearing them talk about fucking shit like this room was really small, so it was hard to fit the camera in there. It's like, shut up. I want to hear, I want to learn more about why you made this movie. And it becomes very clear that their sense of humor really is that crude, that this is the stuff they think of as high comedy, that the director, while perhaps he's not homophobic, certainly has no way of expressing himself about anything homosexual or gay oriented that doesn't come across as insanely insulting. And you get no insight at all. And also you can, Iyaz, let me ask you this about what percentage of the commentary were you able to actually make out?
You know, it's weird because in most commentary tracks, they will really take the actual film audio and bring it really low. The film audio is about, I'd say, 80% the volume of the commentary track. So at times, I found myself listening to the movie because I'd just seen it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pay attention to the commentary track because there's a lot of laughing going on there. If I had guessed a percentage, I probably paid attention to about 50 to 60% of it because there's a lot of laughing and then you can't even hear the story anymore. And it's pretty dull too. Like, I didn't think they would ever figure out or explain to us why they made this movie or who this movie was for or what's going on with it. But I was hoping for, like, since the actor who plays Frank was there and the actor who plays King or the monster is there, they could provide more stories as to what's going on. One of the few things I enjoyed about the commentary was them saying how they shot it out of order. Particular thing where Greg, who plays King, loses like 10 pounds between the two shots because there's all kinds of continuity errors in this, and they do laugh at themselves at how bad some of the practical effects are. So I respect them a little bit for that because they could laugh at themselves. But everything else you're saying is true because then I found out the writer-director guy, he's the voice of Liberace because nobody could do it right. So he did it himself.
His Liberace sounds like what's the name of the actor who used to be on Celebrity Squares? But anyway, his Liberace doesn't sound like Liberace. So he can't do it either.
It sounds a little bit like Snagglepuss.
Paul Lend. Paul Lend. That's the name of the actor. Which yeah. So anyway, we don't get any insight from the commentary. We just get lots of boring details about, it was really fucking cold that day. It was fucking windy as shit. I'm like, well, thank God you told me that, and I couldn't tell by the fucking tree breeze going back and forth right behind the fucking character. Jesus fucking Christ. I was so pissed off at having to watch this goddamn piece of shit. Not just a second time, but a third fucking time, so I could have the commentary track too. Neither Iyaz or I, nor neither of us, got all the way through the commentary track. You stopped something like 20 minutes to the end, and I stopped something like 7 minutes to the end. I was watching it on 1.5 playback speed. That's as fast as I could go before I could no longer understand the New Yorkers talking anymore.
I watched it 100% like regular speed, so that's shocking. I should have tried that. I didn't know why I didn't even think about that. But I do have a note.
I did it normal speed for the regular viewing to go all the way through the second viewing of the film. But when I watched commentary, I did 1.5.
Yeah, I have a note on why I quit 20 minutes into the left of the movie. And it says here, because I took lots of notes in this, because I didn't take notes the first time. So commentary track, 20 minutes left in the movie. You know that feeling you get in the back of a cab when you smell that vinyl and whatever else was in that back seat? That's how my stomach felt watching this movie for a second time in the same day. That's why I turned it off. Like, I was starting to feel sick. Yeah. Which is very odd, because usually this stuff doesn't disturb me this much. But it was the second time today I was watching this movie. And it was just, I mean, it's actually a sickening movie. You watch it long enough, you're just like, no.
There were things. I think the treatment of the homosexual material in the movie horrified me so much the first time I viewed it that I didn't even realize how many gore effects are in this film, and there are a lot of them. So when I watched it again, I was like, wow, there's way more gore in this than I remember, because I mostly remember just the horrifying Liberace stuff.
One of my notes is, oh shit, I forgot how randomly graphic the severed penis was.
Yeah. Yeah, so the this movie is just as awful as it was the first time we watched it.
We all sound like we're describing this national tragedy. Because we're all like, we have this very somber tone, and it's a lot of work, and it's very, very low.
Let's talk about the behind the scenes featurette, because we all three watched that, right?
Okay. Yeah, I watched that.
You saw it too, Eric, right?
Yeah, I watched it when I first watched it.
So you watched it when you first watched it?
That's a good time to watch it.
Eric?
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay. That's the least helpful thing you've ever said.
That's
the behind the scenes featurette, it essentially comes across like a home movie that someone was shooting while they were making the movie. There wasn't like it was anyone intentionally trying to document the process. It was, and keep in mind, this movie was shot in 1998. So this was all like handheld camcorder stuff. And a lot of it is just as useless as the fucking commentary track. I think seeing the behind the scenes featurette and seeing how they decided to market the movie, it shocked me that it was so unsurprising what they were doing. And by that I mean, like, one of their marketing tactics was to print out posters of the movie, put them on posts, and then pay homeless people to stick the post with the poster on it inside their shopping carts that they're pushing around the city.
I thought you were going to talk about their other marketing genius plan where they.
I was going to get to that, but you please take it away.
You know what? We need audio of me saying this, because why not? So there's a scene in this featurette, which is this is a very loose word for featurette. Like Jonathan described, it's like someone took a camcorder and they were given one tape and they recorded all this crazy shit as it was going on. There's a guy sitting at a desk with a bunch of little gerbils and a bunch of condoms and a bunch of Rock and Roll Frankenstein cards. And what he's doing is he puts the gerbil in the condom. He then staples a card that says, the promotional material, then throws it in a box. And there's lots of them there. And he's continuously doing this. So this is one of their marketing pieces of material, which we haven't even touched upon because this is somewhat integral to the movie.
Yeah. Remember when I was talking about how Liberace's penis isn't just gay, it has all these taboo fetishes. That includes the idea of shoving a rodent wrapped in a condom up one's rectum. And actually, I need to correct you, Iyaz. They were not hamsters in the promotional materials because he couldn't find fake hamsters. He could only find fake mice.
Mice,
Yeah.
okay.
But they were supposed to be hamsters.
Even in the movie, it's supposed to be a hamster. Yeah, because
Or
one of my
gerbils,
notes
I
on the
guess.
movie was
Yeah.
gerbil. That's not a gerbil.
They look a lot like mice, but since they called it a
Yeah.
gerbil, I just wanted to go with that. But I see your point
Right.
because they definitely look like mice.
Yeah, they were mice. So yeah, actually, gerbils. The gerbils also play an important part at the end because when the monster is on the run after he has killed Bernie Stein, spoiler alert, he and Iggy run into a warehouse, a gerbil warehouse, with pallets of boxes of presumably gerbils in them.
Well, yeah, as gerbils are us.
Yeah. So then, and that's where he finds the huge hook to hook onto the base of his penis in order to rip it off of his pelvis and free him from the terrible burden of Liberace.
So in the behind-the-scenes featurette, first of all, it shows stuff that I had forgotten happened in the movie when like he cuts the stomach of the woman, where King does that, and then he fucks it because that's what he does. I'd forgotten about that. But they also had a behind-the-scenes shot of the director directing King's fight with his own penis. So there's people saying, more movement, because there's a puppet. We should actually describe the entire movie at some point. There's a puppet.
Well, do we?
In his pants.
Should we?
I don't know. There's a puppet in his pants, and Greg, who's playing the monster, is attacking himself like this. Just pretend this is it. And they're telling him
so he's just
fight a little harder.
He's just barely moving his fists in the general vicinity of this enormous penis puppet.
Well,
Yep,
they're
and
not
then-
his fists. They're Jimi Hendrix's fists.
Right.
Let's-
So
The actor is moving his fucking fists.
eventually, the penis is removed in the behind-the-scenes featurette. You see that it gets pulled away, and they're trying to get some blood spurt. It's not enough, so the actor just pries open his pants a bit so that you can see all the blood. You hear the director say, "Stop laughing." So everybody stops laughing because this is ridiculous. And then, I think they just stopped the shot. So you get to see the direction of more action on the penis there and more on the fight. There's also another piece of brilliant commentary. Jonathan, do you remember the scene where there's a groupie with King, the monster, and she's dressed like a man?
Yeah.
Do you happen to remember the commentary I'm talking about?
I remember that they were saying that they were surprised that she didn't like the movie. Is that what you're talking about?
No, what I picked up from that scene was the fact that the writer and director said, "Hey, that's actually an actual sound of a blowjob."
Oh, right. Yeah.
You go ahead.
He used to make porn. The director, big shocker, the director of Rock and Roll Frankenstein used to edit porn, and he talked about how there was this sound that was picked up during the filming of a porn sequence during a blowjob scene. And there's a scene in Rock and Roll Frankenstein where a groupie is performing oral sex on the monster. I mean, obviously we don't see that. We see what's supposed to be happening, but
That
it's
would
not
be
a porno.
way too harsh for this movie. Of course, they're not going to show that.
Yeah, but the sound effect he played, and he was so proud of this fact, was the sound from that movie, that porn movie that he edited. He said he kept the sound the whole time so he could use it in some other future thing, and this was his big chance.
This was the real deal, as you put it.
Yeah, fuck that guy. So, God, let's talk about some of the other wonderful things we learned in the commentary. For example, we learned that that when he was trying to cast the role of the priest, he had about 5 or 6 guys audition, and they all were fine for the part because really, he said he was looking for someone who looked gay. And as we learned from the director, gay people have a certain look to them. He points this out. It's just a fact, according to the director, that gay people look a certain way. So that didn't make blood spurt out of my nose at high velocity. Then he said, he just needed a certain voice and a certain look. And I'm like, oh my God, he's like looking for someone who's going to be that stereotypical flaming queen type of character. That's what he's looking for. He auditions 5 guys for it. He says, then for some reason they wanted a copy of the full script, and then one by one I would contact them and they'd say, I don't really think I want to be part of this movie. Okay, any sane person who had read this script would say, it doesn't seem funny. It seems really mean and disrespectful. It is painting an incredibly nasty caricature of various people. It's not. And even if it were painting a nasty caricature, it's not funny, so it doesn't. There's nothing to balance it out. It's just nasty, and not nasty in an interesting way.
I kind of think the more that I reflect on this film, especially the second time through, the more I hate it.
Yeah,
like we've watched horrible films up until this point for 60, 70 some odd films, and then we watch this one a second time and I'm just like, oh no, this is still the worst. And actually that makes it way worse. Like, yeah, I mean, even watching the ICP films, they're not as mean spirited as this,
they're more juvenile, they're more asinine. In some ways, but they're not nearly as misogynistic or homophobic as this movie is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's there's no humor in it that's actually funny. One thing that I was telling my wife about, I said, here's the crazy part. They actually have Frankie Stein, the scientist character, has a sit-down talk with the monster King, and he says essentially that King should just be able to accept himself for who he is and for his desires, and to not be ashamed of them. And it's a moment where you're like, there's some decency here. There's some decency in this scene, and I could almost forgive some of the homophobic shit that comes out of the mouths of some of the other characters, primarily Bernie. Because you could argue, well, that's the character, not the filmmaker, right?
Sure.
That's the
if we
character.
Get one redeeming character, that's great. But
then 2 problems with that. Problem number 1 is that you still have Liberace. The penis, out of all the body parts, only the head and penis get personalities. And he has Jimi Hendrix's hands. So there's another problem. It's not blackface, but it's black hands. Then he's got Sid Vicious's ass. He's got some part of Buddy Holly. I don't think they ever established which part it is.
I have a note on that. They dug up Buddy Holly. What happened there? I'm
guessing it's supposed to be the torso or something. But at any rate...
Wait a second. Wasn't Buddy Holly like in a plane crash? How much was left of him?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Maybe just a torso. At any rate, so you've got this... If it were just for the fact that Bernie was the only one spouting off homophobic stuff, you could say, well, that's not the intent, right? That's a character. You should not ascribe a certain philosophy to a filmmaker that a character has in that filmmaker's films. That is short-sighted. But Liberace, the penis, his personality and the statements he makes are so vile and awful and beyond gay stereotype to like this weird perverted version of what a gay stereotype is, that it erases any goodwill you might have for the fact that there's this one scene with Frankie Stein saying, it's okay, you should accept yourself. And the second part of this is that Frankie Stein is a fucking necrophiliac. So you've got a necrophiliac saying to someone else that being gay is okay. Well, he's a fucking necrophiliac, right?
Yeah.
So that also makes it problematic. You're like, well, this is a character who has a sexual preference that is well beyond taboo in our culture, and he's trying to tell someone who has a sexual identity that is not really taboo, except among certain populations that can be pretty hateful, that it's okay. And like, both of those problems mean that this movie ultimately is nasty. It's not. It doesn't have a redeeming message. So, but it was like, if only they had not had Liberace either voiced in the movie at all, where the penis doesn't have a voice, or it just didn't go into this dingleberry obsessed, golden shower desiring, scatological, hamster stuffing, weird personality.
And title.
It was just so gross. Yeah.
So you better somebody write that down, because that was.
I can't even remember what he just said.
Yeah. At any rate,
the other thing is, Jonathan is not exaggerating on any single thing he just said there.
Yeah,
like
that's all in the movie.
All right. So, at this time, I'd like to request that I read some highlighted portions of my notes, since I took them all.
Yes, please.
All right. Settle in, kids. It's gonna get weird. First note: I'm embarrassed having this movie on in my apartment after watching the behind-the-scenes feature, because my speakers are right by the door of my apartment, and you can hear it in the hallways. So I'm really sorry to the people of this building. All right. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame cemetery / body part montage. The practical effects aren't half bad. A bit gross, though. Not shown the trip to Graceland and obtaining Elvis's skull. Iggy just shows up with the king's skull. Then there's a section entitled Getting a Penis. Bernie is concerned about the rock star's penis. Quote, the schlong is the piece de resistance, he says. He guns for Jim Morrison. Now the Stooges go to the collection. It's a big bank safe style vault. Good thing the vault isn't locked. The collection of penises are shown in jars. The idiots drop Morrison's penis jar on the ground and put it back into another jar. Turns out that jar had acid in it. A smoke alarm is set off, so the Stooges steal Liberace's penis and run. The guy playing Elvis looks more like Adam Richmond from Man vs. Food than Elvis. Next note. Okay, this is going to get weird now. King starts having sex with the guy. Guy complains, not so hard, you're hurting me. Liberace chokes at the guy and says, Mother, I love you, when he ejaculates. This is all part of the movie, guys. And for the second time in my life, I had to look up the word felch. Moving on. King gets therapy, and here comes the church scene. King runs into a priest and says he needs to confess. In confession, King explains he's having unnatural urges, and he has sex with another man. The priest asks for King's hand. The priest then pulls King's hand onto his own penis. King gets upset and starts beating him up. The priest likes it. King gets priest to bend over and drop his pants. King then rams a 6-foot crucifix into the priest's ass, killing him, presumably. I don't know if you just heard Liz yell the word "what," because she has not watched the movie with me. I have not made her watch the movie with me. It's not been fun to watch the movie alone. Okay, next up, going to the end here. He collapses to the ground. This king collapses to the ground while the green penis hangs above him. Iggy is sad. Taps plays. The penis drops to the ground. Liberace laughs, and the penis leaves the picture like a snake. The end, with the question mark is shown on the screen. I feel sick. Commentary track to follow. And that's my abbreviated notes on this movie.
It's kind of awesome that you didn't make Liz watch it, because I made my Liz watch it. I didn't make her. But I said, I have to watch this movie. And she said, all right, I'll watch it. And I was like,
oh, Jesus.
Are you sure? And she's like, well, you talk about it. I mean, of course, because like anybody who we've talked about this film is like, wait. I have a chance to watch this now. About, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes in, she's like, this is the worst thing I have ever seen. Like, this is actually just horrible and offensive. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I told you. Like, I told you going into this.
You hadn't even gotten to the really bad parts yet.
Yeah, no, nowhere even near the ending. But yeah, like somewhere around 30 minutes in, it's just like, can we just turn this off? Like, can we just stop? We can just stop this from happening. And that's the sad part about this movie, is that at any point, you could just stop it from happening. But we didn't, and we're horrible people.
Well, and to be, first of all, ultimately the filmmakers are the horrible people. They could have stopped it from happening at the source.
They could have stopped it much earlier.
Also, it's, we were talking, just to go back to the commentary track and how hard it was to hear. Not only was it too close to the volume level of the movie, but there were times where they were talking over each other or mumbling, which made it absolutely impossible to understand what was being said. Not that I had a lot of confidence that was worth hearing in the first place, but still. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys, I didn't worry about having a second screen open for this one because we had already watched it once.
Right.
Yeah,
Did either of you bother, or did you just watch it with whatever? No. Yeah, same. But
yeah, and the second time I was watching it, I was kind of not even looking at it anymore because I was just sick of it.
I can tell you though, because I remember distinctly, the first time we did this, I watched it all the way through without an interruption.
You're right. So it's the crucifix scene that got me to stop because I remember that because I was like, okay, this is weird. And it's offensive. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is. And then when that scene with the priest happens, I was just like, okay, I have to stop this movie because this is like, and I'm not offended easily. That's the other thing.
None of us are.
Like, in some respect,
yeah.
I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm the weakest one. Maybe I'm more easily offended than the rest of you guys. But I don't know. But when that scene happened, I'm like, what the hell are you guys thinking in the plot? And this is, I didn't even like just have my descriptive durable notes here. Right? I didn't read that part of it. God. Yeah, I remember when that thing got worse. That was the irredeemable point.
See,
just like,
that to me, that part didn't offend me nearly as much as just all the underlying, like, weird misconceptions about what being gay must be like.
Well, see, what I was hoping for, like these guys getting their comeuppance. You know, Bernie getting killed is actually a good thing with this movie. Right. But like the people that are hating on it, I'm thinking maybe they're going to turn it around and this is going to be funny. But when they did that, I'm like, no, they're deciding that they're just going after everything, which is fine because if you want to make nothing sacred, I totally get it. But there's like a line between this kind of movie and like what's that guy's name who did like Postal Yui Bowl? I'm saying his name wrong.
Oh, Bowl.
But like his movies,
we watched Blubberella.
Blubberella, right? His movies suck.
No. We didn't watch Blubberella. We tried to watch Blubberella.
We watched part of Blubberella.
I think I got 11 minutes into Blubberella and then said, that is all I can do.
We must have finished that.
No, we didn't. I don't think any of us...
a good amount of it, but none of us finished it.
I don't think any of us finished it. I'm pretty sure all three of us... I think it's the first movie we all three gave up on. And it may be one of the only ones that all three of us gave up on.
And the star of the movie directly tweeted us about it.
Yeah, because we posted about how horrible we thought it was, and she was like,
watch it.
Hey, I was in it.
No, I think she said, if you think it was horrible, to watch it.
Right.
Just think about it because I was in it. Like that was, I think it was more that...
She was actually seriously pretty cool.
She had a sense of humor about it. Yeah. I mean... where are the actors in this movie, and do they have a sense of humor about it? Because if they do, their sense of humor is probably horrible.
If you were to have listened to the fucking commentary, you'd know the answer to those questions.
I'm not doing that.
In the featurette, at the end of the featurette, where they have the premiere, and people are laughing at certain scenes, and then there's this astonishingly inebriated woman telling him how the movie wasn't bad. Do you guys remember this?
Yes. I actually looked away from the screen because I felt so embarrassed on her behalf.
It was
But I do
it was
remember
like
what you're talking about.
shit-faced drunk saying it was not as bad as I thought it would be or something like that. It wasn't like a really positive, glowing review either. But she was
Right.
very excited about the movie. And I just wondered, like, who were the people in this theater that were like, yeah, this is awesome? Because, or that's like the only one they could get to say that on camera, because why would you ever say that?
I mean, this movie always bugged me too, because when you explain the premise that, you know, you're going to reanimate a bunch of rock and roll stars and put them together in this Frankenstein who's going to be a rock and roll Frankenstein, your initial reaction to that is, well, that sounds fantastic. How could this be bad? Like, this sounds acceptable and funny, but no. And no.
No, it's something that after you start watching it, you realize they took an amazing high concept premise and did the absolute worst thing they could with it.
Yeah. And that's why I propose for episode 500, we remake Rock and Roll Frankenstein. Same premise. Less homophobia.
Less will be easier.
If we do it with less homophobia, it'll probably be funny.
So
yeah, I really do think the idea of creating a rock star out of bits and pieces of other rock stars is inherently an interesting and funny idea. These guys just had no concept of how to do that and make it work.
Yeah.
And one more
I'm sorry,
thing.
you were going to say.
If we're going to have Jimi Hendrix in our version of Rock and Roll Frankenstein in episode 500, he's a lefty. He's a fucking lefty.
Right.
That's true.
In the first scene, they have King sitting there. He's handed a guitar. He starts messing with Lefty. I'm like, okay, cool.
Let's be fair, Iyaz, though. Let's be fair. The brain determines whether you're left or right-handed, and it was Elvis's brain.
Well, if it's Elvis's brain that has full control over the hands, that means that he will not be able to play like Hendrix. He'll play like Elvis, which is totally different. Which means you don't need Jimmy's hands. Okay, but if you're going to pitch the idea that each part of the body had its own brain, which is basically what they were saying in this, which is weird because why would these two parts only have a fight? Since Hendrix actually has like more stuff to him than the rest of them, he should have been a lefty.
Wait. Hendrix has more stuff to him than the rest of him.
More, I would assume that he has more mass to him when they start off than Liberace's penis before it mutates. Okay?
Right.
So if you're talking about just mass having enough to give you a memory, arguably muscle memory, if that's what they're relying on, I'm going to argue that Jimi Hendrix's skills with his hands might actually have a say in how things are going to be, and being a lefty. Now, Elvis being a righty.
Do we know if Elvis was homophobic? I mean, it was back in the day, but do we...
I think he would have a problem if he started not liking women when he always liked women. I think that would mess with his head.
Maybe. Yeah, that would kind of screw with you, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that he would have used the term fudge packer quite so frequently, or fudgy.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that's from Memphis. I don't know how they speak out there though. So we did it. We watched it again.
Yeah.
And you know what? In the commentary track, they said if enough people ask for it, they'll actually get a better transfer of the video, so it actually can be shown in 16:9. Because this whole thing was in 4:3, because that's the only way the transfer was made.
Hold on, they have the originals of this. We have to find where those are so we can destroy them, so that the transfer will never happen.
Yeah. Because it was hilarious to hear them say, like, and they were all excited, like, yeah, if people get into this, we can get it in a different way. It won't be in that 4:3 aspect ratio or something similar. It's like, nobody's going to get behind this. Nobody.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No.
I still think that it'd be much better
This may have been the most solemn episode of PWP.
Yeah.
So.
It's fucking dour, man. Well, we had to watch it multiple times, and we already dreaded it, and I mean, we put it off by recording episode 151 before episode 150.
It's worse than I remembered. Honestly, way worse than I remembered. I forgot about about Frank's obsession with the dead, and touching himself while looking at images of opened up bodies.
Yeah. You know what's weird is I remembered that part, but didn't remember. I didn't remember a lot of the like explicit homophobic things with Liberace's penis. So, yeah, I don't know. There's so many aspects to the horribleness of this movie.
I forgot how many times you have to hear the word dingleberries from a poor Liberace impression. And dingleberry is just like,
yeah. I have one of my quotes that I pulled, which was I think he was talking to the producer. What was the producer's name? Uncle Bernie, right?
Bernie Stein.
Yeah, talking about making it. I was thinking about making a vagina, and Uncle Bernie says, "Think I'd invest in a rock star with a twat between his legs?" Uncle Bernie.
Yeah, misogyny also plays. Okay, so here's another thing in the commentary track. Another part that is absolutely horrifying in the commentary track. They get to the sequence where the monster is going to sleep with the first groupie. So not the one that he slices open, but the one who comes in and immediately removes her top, so she's topless for the entire scene. Mm-hmm. The commentary in that scene is stomach churning.
Wait,
there's a point where the actor who played King talks about how that actress was really a handful, and it's exactly the moment when the character's hand is over her breast.
And then they said, "I hope they sync it up right." That's actually what they said.
Yeah, it is.
What is
intensely uncomfortable to listen to the commentary during that scene. And like I wasn't that uncomfortable with the scene when I saw it the first time because, I've seen enough titty comedies to be like, well, it's sort of trying to evoke that kind of response.
I've seen a shitty National Lampoon movie.
Yeah. And even the bit where like he's having the confusion about the fact that his head is totally turned on by this chick, but that his penis isn't. I was like, there's something that's kind of interesting with that too if you handle it the proper way, no pun intended. But of course this movie doesn't. I don't know how you could do it in a way where it could be interesting and funny and yet not ridiculously offensive. But they certainly didn't do that. So they managed to go straight down the offensive highway full blast. And that's the other thing that we mentioned the last time we watched this. So many episodes ago. We said that it was remarkable. This was a movie that went out of its way to try to offend people, but perhaps the most offensive part of the movie was something that they probably didn't even consider to be offensive. Like the stuff they were going, like the gore and the crucifix scene probably was very offensive to a lot of people. For me, it didn't. I was like, whatever. I get that you're trying to shock me. But it was the stuff that was fueling the humor that I found so offensive. It wasn't even the jokes themselves. It was the intent behind it. The mindset that this is funny is what was offensive to me, not the jokes.
Once you realize that they're mean-spirited from the like especially watching it the second time, you realize that they're just kind of mean-spirited about it. That's what makes it worse the second time. And I didn't watch the commentary track, and so I'm sure your guys' opinion is way lower than mine is right now.
Well, and again, they don't address the stuff that I wish they would, just so I could understand where they were coming from. Because if they were like, at all aware of this, self-aware of it, and like they were owning it, and they were talking about it being like satire, I could at least come to grips with the fact that, okay, they're really shitty at satire. They're not good at it. But at least that's what they were going for. But they never give any indication that that's it at all. Because most of the time they're talking about what location they were in, or some shit that has nothing to do with the scene that's actually unfolding, or bullshit, boring shit stuff like, oh, this was the the second thing we shot on day 5. Like, who the fuck cares? Only
When was
you.
This filmed? When was
1998.
This filmed? 1998.
January through like.
Yeah. Were commentaries a thing at that point?
Well, the commentary, they recorded the commentary post 2001 because they actually talk about the World Trade Center at one point. So the commentary was recorded years after, at least a couple of years after the film had been shot and distributed.
God, you would think on a couple of years reflection that you could come with something to the table. Like something.
And who knows? Maybe in that last 7 minutes they redeemed themselves, and I just haven't seen it.
They're just like,
yeah.
If you
I can tell you one thing for sure. Yeah. Hey, so by the way, we're totally aware. We're totally aware of the tone.
You'll win $1 million.
Right. I will tell you, I have no intention of finishing up those last 7 minutes to find out.
Okay. So what's next?
It's my turn to pick a movie.
Oh.
Assuming that we're going to keep doing this. Are we going to keep doing this?
Sure. Go ahead.
Just be puppies. Like, just puppies.
Just go ahead. Pick Frankenhooker like you want to.
No. I have picked a movie that is not. It's not a horror movie, but it was recently listed as one of the worst films on Netflix.
Oh, good.
Great.
Now, I should say that this list that I'm looking at is largely a list of big budget films. It's not like the super low budget direct to video shit that we have looked at often. And so there are two movies. There are two, yeah. Transformers 2 is not on this list, however. Or Transformers 3, which was the one we watched.
3, that's right. Yeah.
Because we didn't watch 2 because we were like, well, let's not watch the racist one.
Right.
So instead we watched the one where Optimus Prime indiscriminately starts killing things. No, it's so 2 movies that we've watched are on this list. One of them is Crossroads.
Yeah.
So that one's on there. Let's see. Let me see what the other one
Frankenstein.
It's true.
Yeah. Miles better than Rock and Roll Frankenstein. Like Crossroads is maybe 2 edits away from being a mediocre movie as opposed to a bad one. And at least has some themes in it that I admire, even though I don't think they're executed fairly well. There's one other one. Let me see what the other one was. Shoot, it must be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's not a second one on this list that we've watched. I could have sworn that there was a second one because we've watched Crossroads. Maybe there was Burying the X, which was a recent one.
Yep, that was recent.
That was the other one we've seen. So I'm gonna pick.
Bad. I mean,
I'm gonna pick but that was pretty. I mean, it was not worth watching, but it wasn't offensively terrible. I'm picking the first movie that's on this list. It's from the Daily Dot. It is Love, Wedding, Marriage, directed by Dermot Mulroney, and it says, Love, Wedding, Marriage has the dubious distinction of scoring a rare 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. One of 2 Mandy Moore movies, along with Swinging with the Finkles, to earn the honor. In Love, Wedding, Marriage...
Fantastic.
Yep. In Love, Wedding, Marriage, Moore plays an alleged Berkeley graduate and relationship counselor with all the acting skill of an energetic high school cheerleader. And she gets no help from on-screen husband Kellen Lutz, who feels less like a romantic partner than her gay best friend. The film, co-starring Jane Seymour and James Brolin as Moore's wackily estranged parents, wants to be a commentary on modern commitment, but as the New York Times memorably put it, it feels more like punishment for a crime you can't remember committing.
So I have to throw this one out there, which is one of my favorite metrics, which is the fact that this movie, if it actually has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, has a higher rating, or has a lower rating than Biodome, which has a 5%.
It also has a lower rating than Rock and Roll Frankenstein, which is somewhere in the realm of 60%, I think.
There is no way this can be as offensive. There's no possible way.
You got to remember that Rock and Roll Frankenstein only has like 3 ratings at all, right. And two of them come from like horror schlock sites. So
Oh, it has rock and roll. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong movie. Never mind. I found rock and roll fantasy. Also horrible, if you were wondering.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there was an article on Lifehacker today. I think about how believable Rotten Tomatoes scores are, Metacritic scores are, and just know that just because they have numbers doesn't mean it's exactly perfect. Because if this movie has a 0%, and it does, it has to be so much worse than Rock and Roll Frankenstein, which is very hard. But thankfully, this is only 90 minutes. Rock and Roll Frankenstein is 87 minutes.
You know what I will say though? Bad isn't offensive. That's the key here. Bad is bad. Bad's fine. I can deal with bad.
Yeah, I mean that's why I like Lifetime movies.
Bad's fine until you get to pure, like something that's supposed to be a pure comedy, and then bad is miserable.
That's true.
Because one of the other ones I was looking at was the inappropriate comedy. Which was, I think, another one. It might have even been on that same list of worst movies on Netflix. But after I sat there and I almost picked it, and then I thought, you remember Universal Remote, right?
Right. Did I pick that one? That was horrible.
I think that was
I think I might have picked.
Yeah.
Was that Eric?
I'm pretty sure
I thought
Eric.
it might have been me. Oh, it was so bad though. The only good thing about Universal Remote was there was that one section that was about a Black Dracula, and he had something about riding a horse, and it was just so absurd that I genuinely found it funny. And then shortly thereafter, I had to turn the movie off because that was another one I think we all three gave up on.
Yeah,
I don't think any of us watched it all the way to the end.
For episode 6,000, we'll watch the whole. No, we're not going to watch.
No, Jesus Christ! Stop making fucking promises, Iyaz. You can be replaced.
6,000, yeah. By 6,000, I'll be dead and replaced by a Roomba or something. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
You no longer edit or publish these, so.
I don't think I ever edited this. I just would put them out there.
That's true.
Remember?
You never really edited them.
Yeah,
it was like
without pretense.
Which raised the question of
any edits.
Yeah, it raised the question of why sometimes the episodes weren't like immediately available.
No, wait. There were times where we would have a conversation because we didn't live stream this, where John would be like, "You got to take that out. Yeah. You have to take that out." And I'm like, "Also, I should not have said that word. You should take it out. Take it out." So,
well, that was back when Discovery owned How Stuff Works, and I felt like I needed to be a little more careful with the things I said.
Yeah.
And then I just stopped caring, I guess.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if one of us worked for like a massive multinational corporation and we said this crazy shit all the time? That'd be crazy.
Well, some of us have been talked to about it in the past. Yeah.
Anyway, I think on that note, that's the perfect time to see how episode 151 is going to go. Next time on Podcast Without Pretense.
Iyaz, you got to take that out.
I'm not going to do it.
I think Iyaz needs more batteries.